Welcome to the Foresight Health Roundup podcast, Foresight Health's podcast series for healthcare revolutionaries. Outcomes matter, customers count, and value rules. Hello again, everyone. This is Dave Burda, news editor at Foresight Health. It is Thursday, March 6th. Daylight savings time begins on Sunday. We spring ahead an hour. I'd like to spring back to November 5th, 2024 and redo the election. I think we'd have a much different result after this complete and utter disaster. One of the countless disasters has been the rollback of DEI initiatives. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course. On today's show, we're going to talk about how that rollback is affecting healthcare with Dave Johnson, founder and CEO of Foresight Health, and Julie Murchinson, partner at Transformation Capital. Hi, Dave. Hi, Julie. How you two doing this morning? Dave?
Living the dream in living color.
All right, then. Thanks. Julie, how are you?
I'm in rainy Boston, but spending time with a bunch of payers focused on AI and got to hear from Mickey Travathy last night. So it's been a good couple of days.
All right. That sounds great. Thank you. Now, before we talk about DEI and healthcare, let's talk about daylight savings time. Dave, does springing ahead an hour throw off your biological clock? And if you could repeal it, would you?
In my first year of graduate school, daylight savings came during exams, and I totally freaked out because I hadn't factored in the lost hour into my schedule. But if it were up to me, I'd make it daylight savings time year-round.
Yeah. You like the extra daylight. That's great. Julie, how about you? Are you a fan or critic of daylight savings time, and why?
Oh my gosh, when you live in a place where sun really matters, I love daylight savings time. That extra hour and just going longer into the day makes me super happy.
All right, 2 for 2. I think we're 3 for 3 here because I'm a fan, because it gives me an hour of extra daylight when I'm fishing and the fish are biting. It's not any more complicated than that. I'm a pretty simple man. So what is complicated is DEI and healthcare in the wake of the new administration's anti-DEI agenda. We're going to do a little something different on today's show, and that's dispense with me sharing the top-line findings of a new report or study that we would talk about. We're just going to get right into it. Dave, where do you think the administration's anti-DEI agenda will have the biggest impact in healthcare? How do you think various sectors of the industry will react? And what can private sector healthcare do about it?
Well, first, let's acknowledge the whiplash. The Biden administration made health equity and access its signature issue under CMS Administrator Chiquita Brooks-LaSure. Now, their principal vehicle for driving this strategic priority was to require more regulatory reporting by hospitals on DEI topics. We have talked about that several times over the course of our podcasts, and knowing me, you know I didn't think that was a very effective way to actually increase access and improve outcomes for marginalized communities, but nonetheless, a very different direction from the new Trump administration. The programs and initiatives, including the Social Vulnerability Index, are simply going to go away. It's going to be much harder to get information. I'll give you an example on the information front. This week, I was trying to find the fact sheet that the Biden administration prepared in February 2023 when they agreed to let state and local governments use American Rescue Plan monies to buy down medical debt. That was a very bad idea. But nonetheless, I couldn't find that fact sheet. And I think the reason is that program disproportionately benefited low-income Black and brown people. The ability to find and use government information to promote DEI or even understand what's happened is already significantly reduced. The most directly affected group will be those seeking gender-affirming care. Now, that was already under attack. It's a cruel policy. 20 plus states have already restricted access. That will probably increase. I was exceptionally disappointed to see NYU Langone in New York City, along with many other hospitals, cancel gender-affirming care effective February 1st. They clearly don't want to run afoul of the Trump administration. At the same time, because of this whole flood the zone approach that the Trump administration is taking, just from a peer outcomes impact, I'm as worried as I am about DEI, I'm even more worried about access to abortion services and the pending Medicaid cuts. All of them together will have a devastating effect on low-income communities, low-income people, and particularly women. I saw this post that I thought was entertaining, although sad at the same time. It was quoting from Shrek saying, "We understand that many of you will die, and that's a sacrifice I'm willing to take," right? Feels like the attitude of the Trump administration right now. These are sacrifices they're willing to take, even though it's going to cause real harm and deaths. So back to big picture, we can't count on the government any longer to be a top-down forcing function to promote DEI. So going forward, those of us who care about this will have to promote it in a bottom-up kind of way. And I don't think it takes a genius to recognize that diversity works. I don't know, 15 years ago when I was running health and higher ed at BMO, we had an outside consultant come in to do team building. And they gave us this instrument. It was called TASE, the Attentional and Interpersonal Survey. It looked at the way we made decisions, our cognitive styles, what were our triggers, where did we put our attention, that kind of stuff. And what the consultant did was he divided us up into groups, and we did this scavenger hunt all throughout downtown Chicago. And it was investment bankers, so it was really competitive. And my team finished second. I'll just let you know that. But the team that finished first, and nobody would have predicted this by the people that were on the team, was the one deliberately chosen to have diverse cognitive styles as measured by this TASE instrument. Every other team was assembled to include like-minded or people with similar cognitive styles. And the diverse team absolutely blew us away. So diversity works. I think going forward, since the government can't tell organizations to be less diverse, it's important to, in a bottom-up kind of way, to demonstrate that diverse teams in the broadest possible ways outperform non-diverse teams. So for now, I think until the dust settles a bit, it's more of a bottom-up attempt to just do the right thing and demonstrate it's the right thing by just being better, faster, smarter than competitors. And honestly, what I worry about most with the United States of America right now is just how unhealthy the country is. And we need the broadest, most diverse, inclusive of strategies, initiatives, and so on to get us all healthy together. So we got plenty of work to do.
Yeah. It's just one big 404 error right now. Thanks, Dave. Julie, any questions for Dave?
Yeah, Dave, great comments. And Burda, I can imagine you couldn't even listen to Trump's speech this week, but in Trump's speech, the quote he gave was, "Our country will be woke no longer. Wokeness is trouble. Wokeness is bad." Yet, the FDA was asked to stop using words like woman and disabled and elderly in external communications. And then, of course, told that was misinterpretation. So, a lot of confusion out there. And I think a lot of Trump voters probably don't think of elderly necessarily as DEI. But if you were a chief health equity officer today, hired in the last decade to really help increase our diversity and inclusion, how would you lead through to the other side of this chaos?
Yeah, I don't think Trump's speech is going to go down as one of the greatest State of the Union addresses of all time. I particularly liked how he once again said God had called on him to save the country. But to your question, Julie, I wouldn't be in a hurry to enact any permanent policy changes. I'm not even sure the administration knows what day of the week it is. They're moving so fast. So things are going to settle down a bit at some point. Also, there are just a whole host of legal challenges that have to play out that will influence this arena. So first and foremost, I wouldn't be in a hurry to enact new permanent policies. And as I just said, governments can't tell health systems to be less diverse. Diversity is, as I just said again, is a good business strategy. So if I were in this role, I'd keep doing what I had been doing, what the organization had been doing to build and develop the most inclusive and capable work environment and teams possible. Now, having said all that, I'd also probably keep as low a profile as I can. The last thing you want to do is get the attention of this administration because they come after you. But like the Bible says, this too shall pass.
I knew it.
Let's hope so. Thanks, Dave. And Julie, you are right. I could not bring myself to watch it. Instead, I had told Dave I watched a documentary on a person who saved modern art from the Nazis. Great documentary. And I felt I was living in it right now. Okay, Julie, it is your turn. Where do you think all this anti-DEI stuff is going to hit healthcare the hardest? How do you think various sectors will react? And what's the impact on market innovation, startups, entrepreneurs, investments, et cetera?
Listen, I believe that words matter, and they matter because, you both know this better than anybody. Words help us connect with each other and share and evolve. I've given a lot of thought to the words health equity and diversity and inclusion lately. And I really want to be an optimist here because best case scenario, the new administration's just trying to downplay this woke word, right? Maybe we've overused it. Okay, let's restabilize around what matters. And if we have to kill the word woke to help us move forward, I think I can get myself there. Worst case scenario, though, as Dave, you were sort of alluding to, the new administration's removing words that defund very important efforts and take away human rights and literally prematurely kill people. And I think that might be the path we're on. And what concerns me most about rolling back DEI is personalized health. And I am one of those believers that personalized health can actually help control costs in the long run and obviously reduce variation in care and just waste in general. But how do we get to personalization without studying the impact of different people? And we all know these disparities. Type 2 diabetes impacts Black and Latinx at higher rates than white Americans. Non-white Americans with kidney failure are referred transplants at lower rates and wait longer. I even just saw a study around MS medications that are literally much less effective for Black patients than white by like a large margin. So we all know these, like the list goes on. So we need diverse representation in clinical trials, like full stop. But of course, Dave, the FDA can't use the word woman or disability. Likewise, we need to reinstate a committee that Trump just disbanded that was meant to identify and reduce systemic barriers for people of color, LGBTQ, and rural Americans in disparities of health, because their differences actually really do matter. I just don't know how we personalize without continuing to more deeply understand what's happening with people. So I'm really trying to be an optimist. Burda, jumping way down off my soapbox, you asked about the impact on innovation and startups and entrepreneurs. And I was saying I heard from Mickey Tripathi and Brian Anderson, who is the CEO of Chai last night. And, strong tenor of the new administration having no interest whatsoever in new policy or regulatory framework, certainly as it relates to AI as being our discussion, but in general, right? So that means that the private markets absolutely have an opportunity here and will step in. And some of that will be in ways that are unproductive and some could be quite productive. A little shakeup is always good for innovation. It probably creates as much opportunity as it blocks yesterday's progress. But when I look at different types of businesses, there are services businesses out there that are focused specifically on LGBTQ or the trans community or the Asian population or women. And these models could be challenged in the short term, but they could also see a boon from the new administration's interest in value-based care, for instance. Like there could be something there. There could be some interesting plot twist that shifts from models like that targeting populations that quote unquote matter to understanding the personalized needs of, different people. Like maybe we could combine interests here to get there. I do think, however, that if you're in the life science world right now, your world is rocked with what's going on with NIH. It just seems like an entirely new level of chaos impacting research and development. So that's concerning. But honestly, most of the innovation community is reacting much like the large players in healthcare right now from kind of a posturing perspective. Be careful, lay low, stay out of harm's way, just like Dave said. But I hope that's temporary. And if they're smart, they're going to find the real words to describe the most efficient and effective care for patients and for the people, frankly, who matter to their business. So maybe we just need to find some new words.
Yeah. Yeah. Lay low. Don't bring attention to yourself. What's the next thing? Hiding in your basement? Thanks, Julie. Dave, any questions for Julie?
Yeah. Retribution is mine. So says the president. Julie, I loved your point about the ability or the opportunity for the tech community to innovate and take control of this. We've got a version of that going on generally with AI. Unlike most other major technological innovation, this one isn't being driven by the government. It's being driven by the private sector, and that has pros and cons associated with it. But one of the pros is it really can move faster and meet the marketplace where need is the greatest. So I'm going to take your comment as a positive sign, at least for today. But I did want to double down with you a little bit on how you started on language, because language does matter. And the Trump administration's initiatives, while very clear and I think going in the wrong direction, are part of a broader anti-DEI societal movement. He's planted seeds in soil that's got some nutrients in it. So that being the case, how would you rebrand and or reposition historically DEI initiatives so they gain broader acceptance, win society over?
Oh, God, so hard. First, I think people think about DEI as being about everyone who's not them, largely Black and Latino people, I think, is who maybe what people think. But, DEI has impacted plenty of white males, veterans, disabled patients. I mean, they come in all races and gender groups. So you're right, Dave, we do have a branding problem. And, because I'm so focused on personalized health, maybe there's something in there. I don't really know what I would do. Like, if Trump got elected by focusing on people's absolute self-interest, then maybe, and I really am not sure I believe this, but just work with me here for a second. Maybe we need to brand diversity in a more self-interested way. Like, do you really want the same care as every average Joe American or as those people? Is that really what's best for you? No, you want the best personalized care for you because you're a special flower. I don't know. I mean, we've lost our way for caring about the people and trying to make sure that we're bringing everybody along. So maybe we can turn the script on personalization to be a more kind of self-interested thing. I mean, I don't really believe that, by the way, but there's something funny there, I guess. Maybe I need some coffee. But it's going to take serious leadership, like we haven't seen in a long time, to cut through this noise to not really what's right, but to figure out what the right words and the right branding are to help us all get back to connecting and sharing and evolving. I'm concerned.
Well, Julie, I love that episode of Saturday Night Live where they're playing Black Jeopardy and Tom Hanks comes on with his MAGA hat and gets all the answers right. And what it shows is that rural America and inner city America have enormous amounts in common. And that's why I like this idea of how do we all get healthier together and trying to frame it that way, maybe. But who knows? Anyway, Dave.
It's much better than picking people apart like my idea. But it just feels like, that's what's working today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I ran a healthcare company, I'd double down on DEI from an employment standpoint and an intellectual capital standpoint. Dave, you're right. Diverse teams do excel. And at some point in the future, it'll be my company left standing when all the dust settles. So, okay, let's talk about other big healthcare news this past week. It wasn't all bad, was it? Maybe it was. Julie, what else happened that we should know about?
Well, I have two small things that relate to our topic today that are important to people like me. First is researchers identified a gene that may help slow brain aging in women. Well, hallelujah, because I could use it. And a study found that women with postpartum depression experience brain changes during pregnancy. And I wasn't impacted by this, thankfully, but I know so many people who were. And that's really a striking finding. So, God, we need We need this research.
Yeah, it's we need to know what we don't know. That's interesting. Dave, what other news is worth mentioning?
Boy, Julie, that last finding really is interesting. We are just learning how our body operates at the molecular level every day, and I think it has enormous promise. Well, I never do this, Dave, but I'm going to highlight a Foresight Health publication that came out this week that exposes the undue medical debt company, the one McKinsey Scott has funded to the tune of $130 million, and our federal government has funded too, that their program supposedly to relieve medical debt is a charade. They're buying back debt that hospitals had already deemed uncollectible and were going to write off. And so I encourage our readers, if you want to see this exposed, go read the piece. It's called Undue Duplicity, the False Promises of Phantom Debt Relief. You heard it here first.
Yeah, it's a great headline. What a shell game, right?
I know.
Good piece. I highly recommend it. Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Julie. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to learn more about the topics we discussed on today's show, please visit our website at foresighthealth.com. You also can subscribe to the Roundup on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Don't miss another segment of the best 20 minutes in healthcare. Thanks for listening. I'm Dave Burda, Foresight Health.